In React, we can use two types of forms, uncontrolled forms and controlled forms. So in uncontrolled forms, the parent component of the form does not control the form fields. So it can read the form data only when the form is submitted, and it cannot change the form data, but it can set the initial values of the fields. In controlled forms, the parent component controls the form fields. So it can read and write the form data at any time, and it can show and hide validation errors. However, it is necessary to bind a state to every controlled field. So in this video, I will show you how to use the two types of forms. Now I will show you how to create uncontrolled forms. So let's create a new file in the components folder. Let's call it forms.js. Then let's create a component that allows us to add products to the product list. Let's export it. And let's call it add product form 1. Then let's return a form. So here we can create a form of type row. So here let's add a bootstrap class. It is called row. Let's add some bottom margin. Then let's create the first column of this form. So in this column, we will add a label and an input field. So here we have a label with the text name, and we have this input field, which is a self-closing element. It has the name attribute, which is equal to name. So we can add the for attribute to the label, and for in React becomes HTML4. And of course, we have to write it using the camel case notation. But this is not required, so let's delete it. Now let's copy this column. Let's paste it for the brand. So here let's write brand. Let's call this input field brand. Let's create another column for the category. Then we need another column for the unit price. Let's call the input field unit price. Then we need another column for the quantity. And let's call the input field quantity. Then let's create a new column for the submit button. So to display this submit button on a new line, we can provide it with the full width. So this is the submit button. It has the text add and it is of type submit. Now to read the submitted data, we need to implement the onSubmit handler. So just here in the open form tag, we have to add onSubmit. Of course, we have to write it using the camel case notation. And between brackets, we have to provide the function that will be executed when we submit the form. So we can provide an arrow function. So this function requires a parameter called event, and it will execute a function called handleSubmit. So we need to provide this function with this parameter. Now let's implement this function. We can implement it just here. First, we need to prevent the browser from submitting the form. So we need to call event.preventDefault. Then we need to read the form data. So let's create a variable that will contain the name. Let's call it name. And it is equal to event.target. So target here is this form. Dot the name of the input field. In our case, it is just called name. So name here is this input field, And to read the content of the input field, we have to add .value. Then let's read the brand. So let's copy this. Let's call this variable brand. And it will contain the data of the input field called brand. Let's create another variable to read the category. So category here is the name of this input field. Then we need to read the unit price and the quantity. So this is the unit price. And this is the quantity. Then we can make a simple form validation. So if any field is empty, then we can display an alert. So if the name or brand or category or unit price or quantity are empty, then we will display this alert to the user. And of course, we need to exit the handle submit function. Otherwise, we need to return an object. We can call it product. So the properties of this product are the name, the brand, category, unit price, and quantity. And because the property name is the same as the variable, we don't need to provide the property name. We need just to provide the variable. Like this, the property name will be the name of the variable and the property value will be the value of the variable. Also, we can display this object on one single line. Now let's display this product on the console to be sure that we are reading the data correctly. So let's add console.log. So we can display the text new product, and this is the product object. Then we can clear the form. So to clear the form, we have to call event.target. So target is our form.reset. Then to return this product, we have to call a function that we have to receive from the parent component. So this function should be available as props. So just here, let's add props. Then here, let's call props. Dot to the name of the function. We can call it add product. And let's provide this function with this product. So now we need to implement this function in the parent component of this component. Let's save the file and let's use this component in product list. So we can add the component just at the beginning of this div. It is called add product form1. Let's press enter to import it. And because we exported this component using the named export, we can see that it has been imported between brackets. So this component requires a prop called add product. So let's add it. So the value of add product should be a function that accepts a parameter of type object. Let's call this function add product. Now let's implement it. So this function accepts as a parameter an object. We can call it product. And we need to add this product to this state. So first, let's make a copy of this state. Let's call it new products. Then let's add this product to this new array. So here we can add a new element. And now let's update this state using the function setProducts. So the new value of products is new products. So we can either write two statements, or also it is possible to simplify this a little bit, because we can pass this array to the setProducts function. And we can delete this variable. Let's save the file. And we have this form, but we don't have enough space between the different levels of the row. To fix this, we can add the getters class. So just here we have to add G and the unit, 3 for example. Let's save this. So now we can see that we have more space. Now let's click on add and we have this alert. Let's open the console. Then let's fill the form. Let's submit the form. So here we have new product and this is the data of the product. Let's scroll down and we can see that we have a new product item. And we can see that the form has been initialized. So to read the form data, we can either write this code and this code, or also it is possible to replace all of this using only 2 statements. So let's comment this code. And let's replace it with 2 statements. So here we will create an object of type form data and we will provide it with the form. Then we create the object. So the object is equal to object.fromEntries. Then we have to provide it with form data.entries. So the object that we have here is equivalent to this object. Then let's make some data validation. So let's copy this. And here instead of name, we have to write product.name. Let's do the same thing with the other variables. Let's save the file. And let's create a new product. Then add. And we have this new product with this object. So now I will show you how to display initial values. So let's suppose that we want to display the initial quantity. So in HTML we can use the value attribute, but here with uncontrolled forms we cannot use the value attribute. But let's try to use it anyway. Let's set the quantity to 1 by default. Let's save the file. So here we can see that we have the initial value, but we have also this warning. This is because the value attribute can be used only with controlled forms, but in our case this form is uncontrolled. Also this field is read-only, so we cannot update the quantity. So in the case of uncontrolled forms, we should not use value, but instead we have to use default value. So here instead of value, let's write default value. And we need to write it using the camel case notation. So V is with capital letter. Let's save the file. Let's refresh the browser. So now we don't have the warning anymore. And we can update the quantity. Now I will show you how to use controlled forms. So in the file forms.js, let's create and export a new component. Let's call it add product form 2. Then let's return a form. So we can copy the form from the first component. Let's paste it here. Let's implement the handle submit function. And let's call event.preventDefault. So this statement allows us to prevent the browser from submitting the form. Then we need to bind a state to every input field. So let's create states for the different inputs. First, we need a state for the name input. Let's call it name. And the function that allows us to update the state, we can call it setName. And to create a state, we have to use the hook useState. Let's set the initial value of the name, which is an empty string, and it is of course necessary to import this function. And here we can see that it has been already imported. Now let's bind this state to this input field. So here we have to add value, and the value will be this state. So between brackets we have to write name. This means that we will display this state in this input field. Also, each time the user updates the input field, we have to update the value of this state. So we need to implement the onChange handler. So each time the user updates the input field, we have to call the function setName to update the value of this state. So here we can provide an arrow function. It requires a parameter called event. So here let's call setName. And let's provide it with the new value of the name state. So the new value will be the content of this input field. So to read the input field, we have to write event.target. So target is this input field, but we need to read the value of this input field, so we have to add .value. We can format this a little bit. Then let's create states for the other input fields. So we can copy this. Let's paste it 4 times. So here we have brand, then set brand, then we have category. The function is set category. Then we need a state for the unit price and for the quantity. And to display the initial quantity, just here we can provide the initial quantity, which is 1, for example. Now let's bind these states to the input fields. So we will bind this input field called brand to the brand. Let's copy the onChange handler from the first input field and let's paste it here. And let's replace this function with setBrand. Let's do the same thing with this input field. So here the value is category. And here we have to call set category. Then we will bind this input field to the unit price. And here we will call set unit price. So for this input field, we don't need default value. So let's delete it. Let's write value. And the value is quantity. Then here let's call set quantity. Then let's implement the handle submit function. So to read the form data, we need just to read the value of these states. So first let's make a simple validation. So if name or brand or category or unit price or quantity is empty, then we can display this alert and we can exit this function. Otherwise, we can create an object using the values of these states. Then let's display the data of this product on the console. So here we can write console.log, new product, and this is the object. Then we can reset the form. So to reset the form, we will just reset the values of these states. So we can call set name, set brand, set category, set unit price, and set quantity. So to display 1 as the initial quantity, we can call set quantity and we can provide it with 1. Now let's provide the product to the parent component. So here we have to add props. Then we can call the add product function of the parent component. So let's write props.addProduct. And let's provide this function with the product. Let's save the file. And let's use this component. So we can use it instead of add product form 1. So just here we can write 2. Then let's import it. Let's save the file. Let's refresh the page. So we have the initial value. Let's click on add. And we have this alert. Now let's fill the form. Then add. And here we have a new product. So we can see the details of this product. Also we can see that the form has been initialized, but we have the initial quantity. If we scroll down, we have a new product.